Hello and welcome to Good Afternoon Ghana. My name is Francisca Kakra Forson. This program is streaming live on social media at Metro TV Ghana on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can join us for the conversation. You can also send a message to a number that will be displaying on your screen. Please do not call the number, just send the message. Our conversation today is bothered on presidential spousal allowances and also the bribery allegations against the Chief Justice. I'll introduce my guests after this break. Stay with us.
Are you tired as a consumer in Ghana when it comes to issues that confront you as a consumer? Worry no more. Kofi Capital, I'm here to give you the information, all that you need to make sure that your right is protected as a consumer. We have too many laws and agencies that should protect the rights of the consumer. I'm here to give you information that will help and assist you to get goods and services delivered to you without any worries. Watch The Capito Show on Metro TV.
Yes, welcome back. Let me introduce my guest for today's show. Joining me in studio is Pius Enam Hadije. He's the former Deputy Minister for Information. Good afternoon to you, Pius, and thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Francisca.
You know, we've been chasing you for a while now, so we're happy to have you here finally.
I'm happy to be here. Very beautiful studio.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Later, we'll be joined via Zoom by Samuel Okujetua Blakwa. He's the MP for North Tong and also ranking member on Foreign Affairs Committee. He'll be joining us via Zoom. Professor Bafo Ajimandua is a former UN governance advisor who will also be joining us via Zoom. I'll kickstart with the recommendation that has resulted in a public outcry concerning the emoluments of the first and second ladies of the country. That will be displayed on your screen. This is referring to Recommendation 18 of the Presidential Committee on Emoluments for Article 71 holders, January 17 to December 2020. Spouses of sitting and former presidents and vice presidents should be catered for by the state as part of privileges extended to the presidents and vice presidents. The administration of President Kufuor introduced the extension of courtesies, including the payment of monthly allowances to spouses of former heads of states, presidents, and vice presidents. Subsequently, administrations have continued the gesture and even extended them to incumbent first and second ladies. The gesture remains purely humanitarian to support and in some cases rehabilitate former first ladies who were evidently struggling to subsist. However, there is no legal basis for this support. Thus, the committee recommends that the support extended to spouses of presidents, former presidents, vice presidents, former vice presidents be regularized and included in the privileges of presidents, former presidents, vice presidents, and former vice presidents. We have accordingly included these allowances at same level as currently pertains in Table A and B on privileges, benefits, and facilities for the President and Vice President. And I'll take you to the table A and B in the next slide, yes, to have a look at that. So we just picked a segment of it. All of it really was talking about the president. That's for the first part, and also the table B, which is the vice president. But we are focusing on the part that refers to their spouses. So spouse of the president while in office gets a payment of a salary equivalent to a cabinet minister MP as currently pertains. Out of office, a payment of salary equivalent to 80% of salary of a minister of state MP if spouse served 1 full term as president, or 100% of salary of the minister of state MP if spouse served 2 or more full terms as president. To table B, and that's for the vice president, we're looking at the spouse of the vice president, and while in office, the spouse gets a payment of salary equivalent to a cabinet minister non-MP as currently pertains. And also out of office, payment of a salary equivalent to 80% of salary of a minister of state non-MP if spouse served 1 full term as vice president, or 100% of salary if the minister of state MP if spouse served 2 or more full terms as vice president. Okay, so let's get on to Zoom, and we're joined by the MP Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa for this conversation, and he's asked that we start with him because he has another engagement. Do we have him? Okay, we've lost him there. We'll try and reconnect, but I'll come back to the studio and speak to Pius, the former information minister, about this. But Pius, first, I'd like to find out how you've been. It's been a long time. Last we encountered you, were Deputy Minister for Information. So where are you now? We hear that you are the CEO of the National Youth Authority.
I hear many things, Francisca, but I'm at home at the moment, doing some other private stuff, okay. But I've been well. Let me seize this opportunity to express my greatest appreciation to His Excellency the President for having found me worthy among many, many equals, and included me in the government of his first administration. First, I was Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and I became Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Information. And it was an honor and a privilege, both serving His Excellency the President and serving our country and learning at his feet. And I am equally delighted that at the ministries, both ministries of information and youth and sports, equally competent colleagues of mine have also now been brought in to also play their part. We are always ready and prepared to serve our country in any capacities that His Excellency may so desire for us to serve.
Has he given you an indication where next he's sending you?
No, but the private conversations between the President and myself remain private conversations. I'm at home now and taking care of some family stuff. Okay. But we are ready and willing to contribute to our quota.
That's great, and it's good to see you and have you in the studio. Now, first, tell me your reaction to the whole reaction. What I will call a public outcry to this matter of giving setting allowances or formalizing setting allowances to the first and second ladies as recommended by the Professor Yanti Amoabwedi Baidu Committee. What's your reaction to it? The minority has said that this report or the recommendation was snuck or sneaked into Parliament, and they've asked for refunds, which we have seen the First Lady Rebecca Akufo-Addo give evidence that she's doing. The Second Lady has also given that indication. What's your reaction to all of this?
Francisca, honestly, I don't have a problem with the voices of conscience, people of Ghana speaking up on any matter, expressing, even in the most strongest of terms, their opinion on matters. That's what democracy is all about, and that's what we bargained for. And we in the NPP we clearly understand for. But we understand that. But personally, I have the greatest indignation towards members of parliament on the NDC side. And I think that there can only be two options. From the way they have approached this matter, there can only be two options. That they were either derelict in the performance of their duties to this country, or they just want to play extreme and excessive partisan politics. I say this because neither the first or second ladies, neither His Excellency the President had a hand in the decision to expand the privileges for the President and the Vice President and rope in their wives. They didn't have any role to play in that. The institution of state, however, that had a hand to play in the matter is the Parliament of Ghana, especially the 7th Parliament, in which many NDC members of Parliament who are speaking today, in fact, some have even proceeded to court after the fact, after their own conduct of approving the Presidential Committee on Emoluments work. After that conduct of approving has become a matter of public discussion, then they go behind us and proceed to court. There can only be two rationalizations. One of two is that they did not do their work diligently, they were derelict, or that they knew exactly what they are doing, but now they want to do partisan politics, which does not augur for national development. And that saddens me. Otherwise,
would it matter that they would not have had majority at the last parliament?
Well, but my understanding is that this was a matter that was passed without dissent. So if it was that there was dissent and that majority had their way, then they may have been now re-echoing their dissent at the time. But Francisca, you are here. We are in this country. You are a professional media person. If there was any dissent, if there was any opposition from the members of parliament, especially on the side of the NDC, in the 7th Parliament, when this matter actually came before them properly, they had the mandate to interrogate this properly and to pass it. If there was dissent, we would have all heard. The media would have reported. There was none. Okay. I am also greatly saddened by the intervention of the former president, John Dramani Mahama, and for me, that actually turned a rather important national discussion into another political football. He issued a statement which was inherently inconsistent, okay, and sought to create an impression that this is something that is alien and that the current administration, i.e. His Excellency the President and the Vice President, should be held directly responsible for the outcome of the work of the Presidential Commission or a committee on emoluments. And
what
I thought
did he
that,
say specifically that gives
for instance,
you that
he says, let me deal with the inconsistency and the inherent contradiction. For instance, he said that the salaries, the allowances that were paid, he admits that allowances were paid to wives of presidents and vice presidents under the presidency, the office of the chief of staff, which is an organ under the presidency. Now he turns around to say that by this recommendation, the Professor Ntiamu Abedu's committee is seeking to sneak, and these were his words, to sneak in the first and second ladies into Article 71 office holders. Now, if that were the case, then in treating the spouses of the president and vice president, even under his watch, under the office of the president, the chief of staff's office, which is under the office of the president, also is an inherent sneaking in of persons who are not in the presidency into the presidency. You're getting the logic. So he tried to politicize the matter, okay? But upon hindsight, I'm sure that he would be regretting this book, because what has he done now? He has put a lot of pressure now, for instance, on his wife to follow through on the examples of the wives of the current presidents and the current vice president. Now people are making the call that, okay, if these payments, because the argument was made that these payments were immoral, it was unjustified, we shouldn't do that. And Mr. President, former President John Dramani Mahama talks of we are living in times of austerity. When he was president, he admitted that we had chewed down to the marrow, okay? That was not austerity, but allowances were being paid, in fact being increased, okay? We went to the IMF for a bailout because admittedly our economic conditions in this country were that bad, never mind the conditionalities that came with the job freezes and so on and so forth. But Mr. Mahama still found it wise to pay allowances and even increase them. But now he's speaking to austerity and saying that we have to take austere measures, and so he creates an impression that, okay, this is an immorality. Okay, granted, without admitting it was an immorality. Now the persons who you sought to denigrate and to humiliate and embarrass, they have done the honorable thing, in my personal view. They have returned the monies, and they are even seeking to forego any other payments that may be due them. Now there's the pressure on your own wife, who was a beneficiary of the allowances that you paid.
But this pressure that you allude to appears more like a tit-for-tat situation, so that because there was public outcry with regard to Madam Rebecca Kufuor and Samira Bawumia, there should be pressure also on Mrs. Mahama, Mrs. Lordina Mahama. The first and second ladies were not coerced.
Correct.
On their own accord, they
Correct.
decided to do the
Correct.
refund. So why should Mrs. Mahama feel the need to reimburse if she doesn't want
Well,
to?
I believe that she's feeling the pressure. It will be a matter of fact. I mean, you can interview her and ask. I believe that she would be feeling some pressure. I am not one of the persons who are necessarily saying that because Madam Rebecca and Madam Samira have refunded, she should also refund. Okay. But you see, it is now a question of coming to equity with clean hands, and so it is not a question for me of tit or tat for the people who are asking. It is because people see the politicization that I speak of, that the husband started. And so even if they were tit for tat, it will be responding to the excessive politicization. And I think that we should move away from politicizing every matter.
You would see, for instance, the national chair of the NPP, John Boadu, the national organizer, John Boadu, talk about the fact that Mrs. Mahama should also follow the stead of, or the lead of Mrs. Rebecca Kufuor and Madam Samira Bawumia, and also reimburse.
Well, they will be taken after the cue of Mr. John Dramani Mahama, who seeks to create the impression that this is an immorality.
Right, so my point is that you're pointing the finger at the statements from the former President John Mahama as beginning all of the politicization
Correct.
of it.
Correct.
But it appears the MPP is also continuing with that.
Well, but the MPP is a political organization. If they are invited into the political arena, they will play. And that's my problem. And coming from no less a
Should
person...
the call then not go to both sides, to not to politicize the matter?
But that's exactly what my challenge is.
Okay.
But I'm saying that in this matter, it will be unfair to just say that let us stop the politicization. Somebody is doing the politicization and another is responding. And so I think that on this particular matter, the conduct of the NDC members of parliament, by not doing a diligent work, if that was the case, or by doing their work and then turning around to now do extreme, excessive partisan politics to give a dog the bad name and hang it, which in my view is now backfiring on them, okay? If that was the case, then that's where the blame should go. And then number two, the intervention of the former president, John Dramani Mahama, okay? Even after leading members of his own party, like for instance, the chief of staff of former president Jerry Rawlings, Nana Tudazi, who came to give a long narrative about the rationale and the history of the arrangements to sustain the spouses of the presidents and the vice president.
As far
Which yeah, absolutely, which ordinarily may make sense, okay? Which ordinarily may make sense. I am the first to admit that many of our spouses marvelous Noel and contributed. You talk about the Rebecca Foundation, you talk about what work Samira is doing, and I believe the same can be said even for the wife of the former president, John Mahama. Okay, I mean, when we want to do the comparative analysis, we can say that maybe somebody is doing more or less, but I do know that at least even Lordina Mahama also moved into NGO work and also contributed, represented the country at many fora. So I don't have a problem if you want to discuss a certain level of sustenance for these persons and their offices. But they try to politicize it, and here we are.
Let me bring in Professor Bafo Ajimandua, a former UN governance advisor. Good afternoon to you, Prof, and thanks very much for joining us. I'd like you to weigh in on this from where you sit, from the governance perspective. We're having a conversation about the state footing the bill of what is understood to be what allowances for the first and second ladies. What's your weigh in?
Well, thank you very much for having me this afternoon. The issue, I think, has been poorly managed. First of all, I don't see anything wrong with first ladies or second ladies present and in the past to be given allowances. I think the rationale has been laid very well by Mr. Nana Akudat, as my colleague on the panel just said. If you read Akudat's piece, it's clear why the government of the ruling decided to institute this. And subsequently, all succeeding presidents have followed suit. I think what the current president attempted to do was to regularize these payments and bring it into a focus and bring it under some kind of a legal framework. Because the executive directive given by Mr. Rawlings during his presidency apparently did not have any legal cover. Secondly, the Professor Ntiamabodu's recommendation, I think that's where the problem begins. Because the attempt was made by that committee to place the salaries or payments or whatever were being used for giving money to these first ladies and others, was to bring it under the cover of Article 71. So I recall the very first voice that was raised against this by my good friend Professor Kwesi Prempeh, who is a constitutional issue, which is that since these individual spouses are not covered by the Constitution, then it will be illegal to place their payments under that article, and that the best thing to do will be to propose a new bill, a law that will then give legal cover to these individuals. For me, that is the crux of the matter. I don't think anybody is disputing the fact of making some payments, especially if you recall the letter written by Todazi explaining this matter. They use terms like on compassionate grounds, humanitarian, because you see at that point, they were thinking more about the wives of those former heads of states who were executed and those who died naturally. That these ladies were left like widows without anything. So out of compassion, they needed to be taken care of. And this thing has been carried through. So in fact, if we want to regularize it, I understand also that the whole committee recommendation went to Parliament because it is part of the larger Article 71 requirements. Went to Parliament and Parliament approved. Whether Parliament approved it on partisan lines or not, we are looking at Parliament as an institution of governance. And once that institution makes a decision, it implies that Parliament, not individual parliamentarians, approved it. So it got the legal basis. But even then, because it is not under Article 71, the legal issues still arise. What is really disturbing me right now, two things, is that it's becoming increasingly, this whole debate is becoming increasingly partisan. In fact, it has been. But we are drawing innocent women, very honorable, distinguished women in their own right. We are drawing them into this. The decision to pay them was never taken by first ladies, second ladies present or in the past. These decisions were made by their husbands. So if anything at all, it should be the husband that should be held accountable, not Madame Faustina, Madame
Rebecca.
Yes,
Rebecca Kufado and Samira Bawumia.
Exactly, or Lodina, or Teresa, or Nana Krono. They were not responsible for making those decisions. Okay? So it's unfortunate that some critics are bringing this woman into focus for this discussion. That disturbs me very much. Because it's like when your husband does wrong, then the fact that you are married to this person, you become responsible for your husband's own ill-doings. That is not right. So I think we should minimize the attacks that some people are pouring on these women, as I say, who never made a decision. Secondly, I think we are taking the whole thing out of context, which is that it is not the present president who is deciding that all former and present first ladies should be paid. That's why the history is important. Let us place in the context. It's all former first ladies who are benefiting from something initiated under President Rawlings. Okay? But I think it's important that we have a very vibrant discussion as a nation, as a people. Let's unify and have a discussion to determine whether in fact our first ladies should be paid. That for me is important because it's not proper for us as a democracy. Every 4 years we raise debates on these same issues. If you ask for my personal view, I don't think salaries are necessary because salary requires a job done, job definitions and all that. But first ladies, second ladies are not appointed, neither are they elected. So in that respect, for instance, we cannot place them under the Article 71. But all the same, I can support the notion that because of their status, and they are capable of using their social status, what we call social capital, to mobilize resources to do what they want to do. And therefore, giving them allowances to take care of other things that they do as the spouses of certain presidents and past presidents. I think it's proper. So I think the debate should be focused and it should be devoid of needless tagging of individuals, especially I feel very bad for all the first ladies, not just Auntie Rebecca and Mrs. Bawumia. All of them, because it covers all of them. Now people are calling for Lodina to also come and refund the money. Why should she? Well, I wish Auntie Rebecca and Mrs. Bawumia, I wish they had not refunded because they did not give the money to themselves, you see. But they have decided to do so. Fine. So if they've done that, and then people are going forward to say, oh, they should pay interest, we should audit them. Audit what? Somebody even suggests we audit her foundation. Then we have to go all the way back to the Rawlings era to find out how much state resources were expended by Mrs. Konadu. And it would be unfair to do that to her. Just as it would be unfair to do that to the present First Lady. So this is just my initial reaction.
Prof, and you also alluded to how all of this has been handled. Could it be perhaps the communication from the executive as well as the legislature to the ordinary citizens could have been clear and, you know, given a certain understanding of what this is and what this is going to be, or this formalization is going to be? Perhaps that would have cleared all of these reactions, which for some people, or in some instances, may be born out of ignorance.
In fact, you said it right. It's a problem with most of our governments, not just this government. I can recount instances where previous governments mismanaged communications around certain critical and sensitive national policies. This is a perfect example. Because you see, some people will say, was it the time for the government to announce this, to release this, for instance? Or, as Americans will say, if it ain't broken, why fix it? The current arrangement where first ladies enjoyed all the privileges or whatever they wanted to do, they got the support, nobody announced them. It wasn't broken, but I think it was out of sincerity, good intention, that look, instead of making these payments without any framework, without any checks and all, maybe let us regularize it. So I think we can appreciate, okay, the intention, which in my view is good intention, to do something on the table rather than under the table, as has been the case. So the whole idea of moving there was the proper one. But as you rightly questioned, was the timing appropriate? Was the release of the information the right way to release it? Was there, even before the release, were there any consultations with potentials of, governments, at times you wonder how we use our government machinery. Government has intelligence. I mean, before even this came up, what was the report? What was the information the intelligence committee were releasing? Unless, of course, this was not considered a sensitive issue, and that perhaps normal thing, we are regular, so let's release it. But if you look at the political context and look at the political ecosystem as we have, the toxicity that we have in our system, the extreme partisanship that we have in the system, I'm not surprised that it's been turned against the president and his wife, when in fact that is not the case. So I agree with you. Your question is appropriate. I think the government has very poorly managed the communications around this particular decision.
I want to take you back to Article 71, and this is the argument that it is an entrenched clause. And I want to, still from a governance point of view, how do you marry that with the other criticism that this should have gone through Parliament by way of a bill, which would have gone into an act, as against this is an entrenched article? Any kind of amendment should see what do you call it? A referendum, exactly. How do we settle all of this?
Very good point. Actually, when my friend Professor Prempeh raised the point about the bill, it crossed my mind. At that point, I wasn't too sure whether this was an entrenched bill. And again, this raises other questions about the constitution we have. You ask yourself, why should such a provision be entrenched? You see, and that's why, for me, I put this question, this debate, in a larger perspective, which is that, look, the whole question of emolument in our country are poorly designed. This whole notion of reserving some people and calling them Article 71 beneficiaries creates a class system, because there are so many other workers in this country. Why do you isolate these few, give them special privileges, and entrench those privileges in the Constitution? And at times, when I think of it, those who control the writing of this Constitution at that time claimed to be socialists. They were populists. They were for the masses. And yet, you see that the Constitution creates a serious class issues here. You see? So, I think this is just one of the many things in the Constitution that must be reviewed. Okay? So, I don't know how to react to that. I'm not a lawyer. But certainly, if it's entrenched, then there's a process for changing that. And in fact, if you have to go forward with that, then we must as well have a complete overhaul of the Constitution and bring some sense of fairness and equity in the way we do things. Because this entrenched provision for Article 71 is a classic example of the class system that the Constitution creates. It is not proper. So even from a governance perspective, you see the difficulties we are having. At times I don't blame the president, but you see, we have a situation in the country where the political class are refusing to effect reform because they don't want to lose their privileges that have been entrenched for them. It's not the NPP and it's not the NDC, because these two parties that come to power, whenever they are in power and have the ability to initiate reform, they don't. NDC can't. Even when former President Tamils did the constitutional review, when the recommendations were made, he sat there and decided to change them. The popular expectation was that we should elect our DCs. They say, no, I would rather that you have 3 people than you choose one. So the political elite has become a problem in itself. And we outsiders, we can, unless of course there's a greater mobilization of civil society to really get on our political elite.
Exactly, and that's the question I want to ask of you. Has this sort of ignited perhaps a certain mobilization that is required of citizens, etc., to interrogate the social contract that they have with the governors?
Precisely. Excellent. This could be great. But you see, this debate has been hijacked by the political elite again. You see, when parliamentarians come to say, it's not good, or we need to get her to refund, or they forget that it's the same people, politicians, who when they were caught to have taken double salaries, they fought back and killed it. Because they have the power to kill it, and they did. You see what I'm saying? So it's a very interesting phenomenon that we are facing. When they are in opposition, like the NPP, when they are in opposition, they have all the better ideas, and they criticize everything that the incumbent government is doing, and vice versa. So the idea of mobilizing civil society to effect changes, I think this is about the time, so that we can put the whole constitution on the drawing board for all of us to participate. Because you know the history of this constitution. Everybody knows. It's not a secret. It was a constitution that in many ways was drawn with limited participation by the people. The representatives and all that, we know, but you know what it was. Certain aspects were even smuggled into the constitution. We know that. Okay? So I think if we want to effect reforms in our country, including these so-called emoluments for Article 71 people, or if you want to include the spouses, all these things are minor. The biggest challenge we have is how we reform and make the constitution truly democratic. That is, I think, should be. So I'm hoping that civil society groups will pick it up, and they should not just be focusing on these isolated challenges that the constitution provides, but the complete overhaul that will enable some real true reforms to occur. Otherwise, at some point, our democracy is going to be put on brakes. Because if you look at how these two political parties are behaving, the political elite, they are going to lead our demands. So we need to really find a way to save ourselves.
Very well. I'll come back to the studio with Pius, former Deputy Information Minister. Pius, what do you say to those who say that, why don't we just scrap this whole Article 71 office holders? Clearly, it's, as Prof alludes to, it's creating a certain inequality among civil servants. For the citizenry, they feel that that's a lot of money going to people who are supposed to be serving us.
Well, my direct response would be that, like you yourself said earlier, and like Prof eloquently spoke to, this is a matter of an entrenched clause in the Constitution, and there's a process to do that. But even dealing with the spouses of the president and vice president, even without touching Article 71, I am minded to suspect that there are other avenues. For instance, the Office of the President's Act, which regularizes, for instance, the payments to the household staff of the presidency, presidential staffers, and all those. And those are not entrenched, and those can be looked at by Parliament. So in the matter, or in discussing how do we deal with the spouses of the president, even without making recourse to Article 71, maybe we can find opportunity in lesser legislation, such as the
President Office Act and the Local Governance Act.
Maybe we can look at opportunities in there and see where we can factor these ones in. I think that I can agree.
Can I go back to that? Those two acts that you referred to, are they not sort of part of the reason why we're here? Because they seem to open up, in a way, who's getting what in Article 71. thereby including the first and second ladies?
No, I don't think so. I think that what that seeks to do is to clearly delineate the establishment of the office of the president, for instance, and admits that there needs to be some essential workers in the office or the institution of the presidency. And I'm the first person, or I do agree with people who think that the spouses of the president and the vice president, they play critical roles in the management, not only of the office of the president, but even the president himself. And so they can always be factored. I mean, the president's cook, for instance, the president's gardener, for instance, is captured in the Office of the President Act. And so if those can be captured, then the head of house, actually, in my view, and for many of our mothers and married women and families, they would know that in reality, women play a critical role in giving their men the peace of mind to do the
management of the home.
Absolutely. So I think we can find some opportunities in there. But I think that.
But shouldn't the current dispensation, where a certain allowance is drawn from the office of the president, deal with that? So, for instance, for the work that your wife, pardon me to use that example, your wife will be doing in terms of managing your home, you should foot that bill.
You see, the roles that the spouses of the presidents play transcend managing the homes. And I mean, you can check with the Rebecca Foundation, for instance, representing the country in several fora. And it's not
hospitals,
just, it's just not the current spouses. This, like I said, some have done, even the wife of the former president.
Rawlings was famous for her 31st December Women's Movement,
for instance, and we know the contribution of the 31st December Women's Movement as far as women empowerment and girl child. So those ones, there can be some, I don't want to say compensation. I think that is generally about sustenance, okay? But for me, I'm saying to speak to the question of, do we need to necessarily scrap 71 to be able to deal with that? I said, no, we don't necessarily need to scrap 71, Article 71, to deal with that. We can use other avenues and vehicles.
The question about scrapping 71 is in a broader context of the inequality. Exactly.
Yes. And Prof spoke to it about the genesis and the rationale and the memoranda that you may have to read in the various clauses, okay? And it's coming from people who, yes, we were told we were socialists and all that, but this is the constitution that we have. To scrap Article 71 goes through a process,
yes,
and we can go through it. But I do know that we don't necessarily have to scrap 71. What we need to do is to have a conversation around the general pay structure within the public space. And we must also do this bearing in mind that it has a direct correlation with our GDP. So the more we govern well, those of us or those of them who are in Article 71, the more we govern well, the more we protect the public purse, the more we invest in production and the economy grows, then we are able to pay the teachers more, we are able to pay the doctors more, we are able to pay everybody more. And then we will no longer then be isolated and discussed as a group that is earning comparatively too high, because everybody is now being lifted up. So I think that is to be done. I think that actually should be the crux of the matter, and that's why I'm happy that we are beginning to see interventions that in the long run would lead to these desirables. But I want to disagree that the buck stops with how government managed information.
That was going to be my next question to you, so please hold on. I want us to take a break. When we come back, we'll look at the management of communication from the government concerning this matter of emoluments of the spouses of the president and vice president. Stay with us. This is Good Afternoon, Ghana. I'm Francisca Kakrafos. We'll be
The search for a reliable partner in dealing with the sale of U-turn buses, genuine spare parts, its repairs and maintenance at a highly effective workshop with remarkable speed. We also have available the sale of Camel car batteries, Weichai and Kia spare parts, Zonton coaches and light duty vehicles for everyday movement. Contact us on 020-000-0831 or 054-555-7500. You can also email us info@saautomobilegh.com or visit our website at www.saautomobilegh.com. SA Automobile, the pleasure of doing business with you is all ours.
Are you tired as a consumer in Ghana when it comes to issues that confront you as a consumer? Worry no more. Kofi Capito, I'm here to give you the information, all that you need to make sure that your right is protected as a consumer. We have too many laws and agencies that should protect the right of the consumer. I'm here to give you the information that will help and assist you to get goods and services delivered to you without any worries. Watch the Capito Show on Metro TV.
Okay, welcome back to Good Afternoon, Ghana. We still have Pius Ajije in the studio. Prof is also on Zoom. But Pius, just before you made your point, I wanted to go on a break so that my employers will not fire me. Yes. But yeah, back to your point.
Just a small departure. I mean, I agree entirely with the brilliant submissions of Prof. Prof is an institution on governance.
Yeah.
And so we take his words very, very seriously. But a little departure is that the blame cannot be, at least not entirely, placed on the inability of government to communicate properly. Because Prof himself alluded to a certain level of high...
But this will be government.
Yes.
This will be government,
well,
not just the current...
I want to discuss the current conundrum. I cannot recall the situation with the previous governments because I'm not seeing, I don't remember these levels of toxicity that Prof describes. But you see, if you have these high levels of toxicity in the system, good communication will be truncated and blurred. What actually we should be asking is, what is the basis or the origins of these very, very high levels of toxicity? It is the overly politicization of every and anything in this country. And that's why in my earlier submission, I alluded to the intervention of the former President John Dramani Mahama. If the former president had told the line of, for instance, Professor H.K. Prempeh in setting out that, okay, it is the vehicle that we are using that is problematic because they cannot be strictly be described as Article 71 office holders. But hold on, the idea may be novel or good. How do we deal with it without seeing to be breaching the Constitution relative to Article 71? If that was the spirit of the communication of Mr. Mahama, I'm not sure that this would have become a political matter. But if you do the kind of thing that the NDC continues to do, and I can refer you to the election of the MMDCs, for instance, we started off with the consultations were on course. We wanted to get to the point that now that the president is an MPP president, Nana Akufo-Addo, you can have a mayor of a city or the MMDC being NDC. Gradually, we are taking the winner takes all, which is also a bane in our politics. We'll be taking it away from the system because whichever party will feel compensated at another level and can also negotiate. When we were far advanced in the negotiations, the NDC decided to pull the brakes and put a spanner in the works. So it is that we must all be forthright with and confront and the bull by the horn and point them out and call them out that it is your attitude that increases the levels of toxicity in the system, and that blocks and blurs government communication and degenerates into something else.
But this takes us back to the point that Prof made. It won't be just this government, and your communication gaps, or gaffes, if I may say, will not be limited to just what you describe as toxicity, etc., from the opposition. That notwithstanding, let me bring back Prof. I'm hoping that I still have a Zoom connection with him. Prof, in wrapping up, specifically on this matter of emoluments of the spouses of the president and the vice, and as well former, what's the way forward? Should the current dispensation of a certain allowance out of humanitarian grounds be maintained, especially to quell the brouhaha?
Well, I personally believe that it's necessary to compensate the first ladies, second ladies, past and present, because the role they play then and those who are in the positions continue to play, I find those roles quite important. And it's not only unique to Ghana. All over the world, first ladies play these roles. We are quick to cite examples from America because somehow we feel inspired by the American democracy, even though we know there's some serious problems with their own democracy there. But the fact is that American first ladies are not given salaries. And the only principle for that is that they are not elected or appointed and therefore cannot deserve salary. But all the same, they make sure that first ladies are well settled. In fact, in the US, just like it, they have their office, they have a chief of staff and many other supporting staff. And I think we should do that for our first ladies. And then it's also appropriate to include in their husbands or spouses' emoluments adequate compensation that will take care of the household. I think the problem here has been the separation of the spouse from the husband. Mm-hmm. And I think after all, when you go to marry, they tell you henceforth you are one and whole or something like that. Okay? So I think we'll save ourselves a lot of problems by making sure that besides the allowances, other compensations can be included in the household. Okay. And I think if you look at the history of compensations, emoluments, all these things are catered for. These are not new. So I'm not against, in fact, they deserve to be rewarded for what they do. But the idea of the notion of salaries is contentious. Okay. So going forward, I think we need to have a national sober discussion. Let's put the politics aside because this is not an MPP issue. It's not an NDC issue. After all, our past 20 years, 28 years has demonstrated that if it's not NDC, it's the MPP. Okay? So let's come together and find a better way of handling this and to avoid the needless attacks and innuendos and hypocrisy.
Very well said. Very well said. A national dialogue to discuss this bereft of any politicization. I'll just like to pick a few messages. You've sent some messages that I'd like to share on the program. Enoch from Saboba says, actually, Ghana belongs to some people. Stop making noises. See unemployment in the country. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Godfred Ajiman at Bogoso. Thank you. I find it worrying anytime MPP tries to equalize anything that happens. It's like a child who has been caught stealing meat from a pot, and when questioned, he drags someone else into it. Example last year. Okay, I'm not going to read that bit, but thank you for your messages. Pius, I'd like to give you, 30 seconds conclusion?
Well, I think that a lot has been said. We agree that this is a national matter.
Yes.
We should discuss it nationally, devoid of the partisan considerations. But I am disappointed that even now we are hearing the minority in parliament go beyond even what they have done already, the embarrassment, and now talking about payment of interest, I am told, and auditing of accounts. I think this is the most laughable proposition that I have heard in recent history. And our parliamentarians should live above what, I mean, they should take the people of Ghana a little more seriously than they take us right now. Okay. That statement cannot and should not be made.
Okay, gentlemen, grateful to you for your time. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring you the second part of the conversation, but stay with the news. The news team will definitely carry that forward. Grateful to Pius Enam Hajije, former Deputy Minister for Information, Professor Bafwa Jimandua, former UN Governance Advisor. Unfortunately, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa could not join us, but this has been your show. Good afternoon, Ghana, with me, Francisca Kakwa-Fosu. We'll do this again on Friday. Thanks for now.
Metro TV, insightful and inspiring moments.
Bringing you Africa's creme de la creme's classiest hangouts, award shows, end-of-year parties, wedding, graduations, birthdays, fashion or corporate events. Metro Social has got you covered. We present Pizzazz with Je ne sais quoi. Give us a call and we will